Hello, I am John EverBlest. The topic today, the thing we're talking about, is the incredible healing power of night and day together. This is part 6 of Eden, God's magnificent outdoor automatic healthcare system. While sunlight is a powerful, comprehensive healing agent, it is not possible to be healthy without daily intervals of darkness. Both night and day are essential for our health. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew and for the deep that coucheth beneath, and for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon. Now, who would have thought? What does that mean? God is showing us in these end times that He has healing agencies at work around the clock in every season. These are the counter agents to the weapons formed against us in these end times. When we mess with that balance and put light for darkness and darkness for light, we mess with our health care, and the weapons formed against us will certainly prosper against us. So, don't mess with the darkness. And what happens when we do mess with God's lights out schedule by turning night into day with bright artificial lighting? If we use bright lights at night, we will forfeit God's magnificent automatic nighttime health care and set ourselves up for cancer. Artificial light at night is directly tied to hormone-based cancers. Hormone-based cancers, also known as hormone-sensitive or hormone-dependent cancers, are cancers that use hormones to grow or develop. Hormones like estrogen and androgen can influence the development and behavior of these cancers. Hormone-related cancers, namely breast cancer, endometrium cancer, ovary cancer, prostate cancer, testes cancer, thyroid cancer, and osteosarcoma. All right, now here's the explanation of that. There has always been a period of daylight followed by a period of darkness. And that daylight, well, it changes. Of course it does. It's not the same amount, intensity, or color of light all the time. It changes from sunrise to solar noon to sunset. Key wavelengths of light have been isolated in that period of daylight to tell time for us, and that's called blue light. Blue light from the sun is exactly the light that we need to set our circadian rhythm. We've all seen sunlight through a prism. It gets divided into the colors of the rainbow, and that blue wave light range is the one range of light that literally appears at sunrise. It starts triggering certain sensors in the brain. And that basically tells the brain that the day is started. And the start of daylight signals so many hormonal pathways. The hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenals, the thyroid, etc. It's like a cascade of hormones. God's had this whole thing figured out from the beginning. All these are optimized by morning light. It should be the first light we see. No screens, no light switch. It provides hormonal balance and optimal metabolism if we don't mess with it. Blue light first appears in small amounts, then grows in amount and intensity until solar noon. It then starts to slowly go away and disappear at sunset. The sensors in our eyes and skin, the sensors in our eyes and skin, that blue light is no longer available. It senses that blue light is no longer available. Campfire and candlelight do not contain blue light. Isn't that interesting? Now, the darkness sets off a whole different set of cascading hormones, different ones that were designed to be released at night for things like tissue repair, etc. But our artificial bright indoor lighting has completely divorced us from those changing wavelengths. It means we're messing with nature, and nature punishes those who mess with it. It messes with God's natural order of the light and dark cycles. As a result, we are seeing that artificial light at night is directly tied to hormone-based cancer. You sensing the dangers here? God designed that morning light automatically gives us a surge of certain set of hormones to start our day. Cortisol, steroid hormones, etc. And when the sun sets and darkness sets in, a different set of hormones automatically starts cascading. So, what happens when we turn on all the bright lights in the evening, and the TVs, and the computers, and the phones, and the night lights? Well, we don't get the nighttime hormones. Instead, we get a second surge of the daylight hormones. Darkness was designed to be as healing as daylight, if we don't mess with it. God's healthcare system was designed to be constantly healing, day and night, summer and winter. It was God's intent that we benefit from every healing phase of light and darkness. Our greatest chance for healing is in imitating Eden, an outdoor, close-to-earth lifestyle. At the sun cure clinics of Switzerland, tuberculosis patients were rolled into the morning sunlight for daily, regulated sunbathing. Dr. Rollier found that morning sunlight was the most effective for healing, and he was the father of the sun cure. Everybody in this day and age, if they're talking about sunlight health, they refer to this guy. I'll read it again. Dr. Rollier found that morning sunlight was the most effective for healing, even though there's less UV. That means something. It means that there is more healing qualities in sunlight than just UV. He said treatment should be given in summer between 6 and 9 a.m., at low altitudes even earlier still, because in this way, the best possible results can be achieved. This guy knew what he was talking about. He had battle-scarred experience for decades. I have a huge stack, about 3 feet wide, of antique books on sunlight healing, heliotherapy, light therapy, etc., from our pioneers. And out of all those books, and all the books I've found since then, Dr. Rollier's book, Heliotherapy, was by far the absolute most practical, powerful book that I'm aware of on this topic. It's called Heliotherapy, 1927. Morning sunlight is the most healing. Now, this is from another pioneer health reformer, and she was at Avondale Health Retreat in Australia when she made this following statement. Let those who are making the plans for health reform in Korenbong arrange the sleeping rooms so that they will get the morning sun, which is so beneficial to sick people. The morning sun. The sun is the Lord's doctor. There is healing in its beams. That's not a metaphor. She continues, faith and works are to be combined. Do all you can to obtain the sunshine of the first morning hours. And then, ask the Lord to bless the means you have taken to secure cleanliness, pure air, and daily sunshine. You don't just get out in the sunlight. If you're out there in his healing sunlight, pray and ask God's blessing upon that. Because he's the one that ultimately does the healing. He makes it look like it comes from nature, from these things, from the sunlight. It doesn't. It comes from him. Sunlight gets it from God, passes it along to us. Ultimately, God does the healing one way or another. So did you know that incandescent light bulbs, the kind that was in common use for well over a century, emitted light as a result of metal being heated? And this resulted in a warm glow that closely resembles the natural light of sunset. Interesting. You understand where we're going with this? These light bulbs give off very little blue light. Aha, that's where we're going. So they don't affect our sleep cycles, at least not as much as LEDs. So perhaps this is why incandescent light bulbs were banned all across the globe, all at the same time, because they did not cause cancer when you used them at night. But LEDs are predominantly bright blue light, which can cause hormone-based cancers. Because we don't want just blue light at night. Because that's gonna mess with nature, man. So I have the opinion that this ban on light bulbs all around the globe was of more than human origin. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Now, even our light and our darkness are being poisoned. Solutions? Dimmable, reproduction, Edison incandescent light bulbs. Now, and dimmer switches. I replaced all my LED bulbs in all my table and flower lamps with these bulbs. But what if you have to get up in the middle of the night to go get a drink or use the restroom? Well, you got a couple of 3 options there. I've lined not my bedroom. It's not my bedroom, but that red night light. I lined the pathways with those. There's 3 in the living room, a couple in the dining room, a couple in the kitchen, a couple, 1, 2, 3 in the bathroom, so that I don't have to turn on a bright light, which will also mess up my biorhythms. Or I choose to wear those red goggles when lights are on. Or I just use that little red flashlight. So now, let's just take a moment and summarize healthy lighting in our homes day and night. If we want healthy home lighting, we must imitate nature. So in the daytime, we're given moving sunlight. It starts out bright light most of the time. It puts out heat and ultraviolet light. So what we do to simulate that for daytime lighting, sun lamps would work. It provides UV and bright light and heat. Heat lamps would work. Edison bulbs would work. I sometimes supplement my lighting with black light because that contains ultraviolet light. Or you know what? We could open the windows. Let the sunlight in. Or we can do most of our working and sleeping and living outdoors. Or we can work on a porch. Now, in the evening, God provides lighting from the moon, the stars, and perhaps by a campfire. And sometimes it's just totally dark. Now, what we can do is use dimmed Edison bulbs, candles, or oil lamps, just like we used to. Not bright, just very dim. But when we sleep, nature provides it. Nothing is brighter than the moon or stars. Most of the time it's just dark. Now what we can do is we are required, if we're going to match nature, we need to sleep in darkness. And if we need to get up and get a drink or use the restroom, use a red flashlight or those red night lights. We are told to make it habit not to sit up. Oh, by the way, this is, before I read it, this is from that same health reformer that I spoke about in Australia. Make it habit not to sit up after 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock? Why 9 o'clock? Every light should be extinguished. That means after going to bed. This turning night into day is a wretched, health-destroying habit. Pretty sure our doctors have never told us that. This is from the antique books, and the antique books are always the best. Well, not always, but a great deal of the time. Anyway, let me read it again. This turning night into day is a wretched, health-destroying habit. How many of us have taken that seriously? Should have. She continues, and this reading much by brain workers up to the sleeping hours is very injurious to health. It calls the blood to the brain. And then there is a restlessness and wakefulness, and the precious sleep, which should rest the body, does not come when desired. So application of that in this modern age, viewing screens at night is also a wretched, health-destroying habit. The same effect. She continues, it is needful to take care of the body and to study its needs and preserve it from unnecessary exposure. It is a sin to be ignorant of how to care for the wants of this habitation God has given us. Especially should brain workers begin to be soothed and not in any way excited as they draw nigh their hours for sleep. Let the blood be attracted from the brain by some kind of exercise, if need be. Let not the brain be taxed, even to read, and of course not to put forth literary effort. You shall, Marion and Fanny, have 1 or 2 hours in the day, as well best please you in the daytime, and you will not feel so starved for intellectual food that you will partake of it in the night hours. God designed that the night shall be given to sleep. Wow, that opens up some doors of questions, doesn't it? God designed that the night shall be given to sleep. Makes sense. Are we to sleep that whole 12 hours? Are we supposed to sleep longer in the wintertime than in summer? Because the night times are longer then. Interesting. Don't have an answer to that yet. She continues, I know from the testimonies given me from time to time for brain workers that sleep is worth far more before than after midnight. 2 hours good sleep before 12 o'clock is worth more than 4 hours after 12 o'clock. Really? How would a specific time of the night make a difference in our sleep quality? How does nature know it's 12 midnight? I've always wondered about this statement. It never made sense to me until I started studying grounding and other things related to light and the earth. So, the next slide is from a scientific study which makes a connection between sleep patterns and grounding. It relates to the slide you are currently looking at. And this is from Clint Ober, the scientist who brought grounding to us in this modern day age. Grounding is just simply walking barefoot on the ground, that sort of thing. It goes all the way back to Eden when God stood Adam and Eve up on their feet barefoot. He didn't give them shoes. Sleep outside grounded. When you're outside, lighting should be similar to what you're looking at there in this picture. Candles, oil lamp, or campfire. And look how sweet that light is, how gentle and relaxing and peaceful it is. God designed it that way, I believe. Now, this is Clint Ober. We have a circadian rhythm of cortisol secretion. High levels wake us up. Low levels put us to sleep. Interesting. Graph A is the expected 24-hour cycle of circadian cortisol. Cortisol is lowest at midnight, starts going back up at 4 a.m. and peaks at 8 a.m. This may help explain the previous statements about the quality of sleep before and after midnight. But there's more to this. Graph B shows wide fluctuations of cortisol, highs and lows, in a group of 12 ungrounded women. Graph C is the result of grounding those 12 women for 8 weeks while they slept. It realigned their natural cortisol levels and rhythms, making the levels uniformed, normalized, and synchronized, even though they lived in different towns. At 4 a.m., this is Clint Ober talking, at 4 a.m., cortisol starts spiking. And it reaches a peak around 6 a.m. By the way, have you ever noticed that the birds come out at about 4 a.m.? And we're on a regular schedule and doing everything right for our health. We tend to wake up at about 4 a.m., especially if you go to bed at 9. So let's read it. At 4 a.m., cortisol starts spiking, and it reaches a peak around 6 a.m. That allows you to get out of bed and not to have a heart attack. So what we learned was, what in the environment is signaling the body to start producing cortisol? It's not daylight at 4 a.m. Well, not always. It's not sound. So the only thing it could have been was that the amplitude of Earth's electrical field starts to rise at 4 a.m., just before sunlight arises. He continues, but the thing that was most fascinating, when we did this study, we had some participants in the beginning that were airline stewardesses from New York. And this is out west. The experiment's being done either in Arizona or California. One of those, I forget. We measured their cortisol the first night. It was off 3 hours from everyone else in the study who were out here in the West. As soon as they were grounded, they synchronized with everybody else. That's jet lag cure there. You don't have to synchronize with the light. You synchronize with the earth in bare feet on moist grass, and you will be synchronized and you will not have jet lag. He continues. So then we learned that when you put your bare feet on the earth, your body resynchronizes with the circadian clocks, the cortisol rhythms, and all of the other hormone cascades that go on in the body. Wow, it's so much more than time differences or light differences. It's not just light and darkness that affects us, but also the corresponding changes in the amplitude of Earth's electrical field during those changing periods of light and darkness. Isn't God amazing? Now, the basic healing principle here, you stay connected to the earth. All of nature is working together in harmony to keep us healthy. We don't mess with the natural order of things. We're living in houses. That messes with the natural order of things. We use our electronic devices. Now, on a possible related note, frogs croaking. About 24 years ago, I was doing some decorating work for a week or so at Camp Blue Ridge in Virginia. It was the off season, and I slept in the nature building right by a big old window there. And right outside that window was a big old pond filled with frogs, and they were sharp and loud and noisy. So my first night there, I was very concerned how I was going to be able to go to sleep with those croaking sharp frogs. But the strangest thing happened. Every night I was there at 10 p.m. sharp, the frogs stopped croaking simultaneously, like a switch was turned off. What triggered that? I'm now suspecting that it may have had something to do with the synchronized circadian cortisol levels of the grounded frogs, the changing amplitude of Earth's electrical field, perhaps. Very, very likely, don't you think? All right, let's change this topic just a bit. Vitamin D and darkness. The first thing we need to address here is melatonin. Then we go into vitamin D. Your pineal gland releases the highest levels of melatonin when there's darkness, and decreases melatonin production when you're exposed to light. Your pineal gland receives information about the daily light-dark day-night cycle from the retinas in your eyes, and then releases melatonin accordingly. In other words, you have low levels of melatonin in your blood during the daylight hours and peak levels of melatonin during the nighttime. The longer the night, the longer your pineal gland secretes melatonin. Because of this, melatonin has often been referred to as a sleep hormone. God puts us to sleep at night. He planned it that way. So now, if we take vitamin D in the darkness of winter, we thwart God's magnificent automatic wintertime health care. Oh man, it's fascinating. Vitamin D is not actually needed in the winter. Darkness is needed. Yes, our vitamin D is typically very low in the winter, and the merchants of pharmacia tell us, scream at us that is very bad. You gotta take these supplements of vitamin D. Oh no, the sky is falling. Does it make sense to you to have to supplement high doses of man-made vitamin D potion during the dark winter season when God Himself deliberately shuts it off for the season? God didn't, what is He trying to kill us? No. Let's talk about this here. Melatonin is a hormone that your brain produces in response to darkness. And natural darkness begins at sunset. Melatonin helps with the timing of our circadian rhythm, a 24-hour internal clock, and it helps with sleep. It turns out, this is so amazing. It's going to lead you back to God. It's just so fabulous. It turns out that scientists have discovered that melatonin binds to the binds to the vitamin D receptors in our bodies and exerts the exact same effect as vitamin D. Immune function, anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, etc., etc. Isn't that marvelous? Now, but we modern people, we let bright light at night mess with that melatonin and our sleep. If you look at the research, you will see that the majority of people are low in melatonin because their evening hours are spent in bright lighting and screens and night lights. This is life-changing information. It's changed mine. Now, I am sitting here amidst 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lights, bright lights at me during this presentation. So I made sure I did not start it in early morning, because that's dim, and I didn't do it in the evening. I started at about 10 o'clock this morning. That's some application here. Because if I do this at night, it's going to keep me up at night, and it has. We were designed to maximize vitamin D in the sunny, warm seasons. But in the long darkness of winter, we were designed to make tons more melatonin because we don't make vitamin D through our skin in the winter. When the seasonal light environment gets to a certain low point, God flips a switch and melatonin takes over. If we don't thwart its production in natural timing with bright artificial lighting, screens, and night lights. Don't put white light night lights in your children's rooms. It will mess with them. And it will mess with them. Maybe that's why babies keep getting woken up in the... What if? Oh, that never occurred to me before until right this moment. If you want your baby to sleep really well, the best chances for it, don't have a night light on. Don't let them be in bright artificial night in the evening. Expose him to the sunlight, the sunrise, first thing in the morning. What if we did that for our babies, not just ourselves, but our babies and our children? That's interesting. You get that baby on an actual earth, ground the baby too. Get them on an earth rhythm where the electrical amplitude is on the side of keeping the baby asleep, where the darkness is on the side of keeping the baby asleep. That's interesting. I'm so happy I just thought of that. No, I didn't think it. I'm absolutely sure this stuff, that was not me. But it's just an amazing thought. Should have put that in writing. Staying healthy will involve a change in lifestyle and replacing our lighting with either original or reproduction, incandescent, antique, Thomas Edison light bulbs, and or wearing blue light blocker glasses in the evening, or just using a red flashlight. All right, the basic eating healing principle here: we borrow life from God and are subject to His care because of it. We trust His care, not man. We stop trusting in man's medical sophistries that contradict God's natural order of things. It ain't difficult here. It's not difficult. Trust God, not man. Jeremiah 17:5 says, "Thus saith the Lord, Cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord." Stay away from the medical sophistries that contradict God's natural order of things. I believe that medical sophistries are as dangerous or more than man's pharmaceuticals. Moving away from that, the moon and women. This is a quote. Several studies have shown that menstrual cycles close to the lunar cycle of 29.5 days are more likely to be fertile than longer or shorter cycles. Some researchers think that the menstrual cycle may have once been an exact lunar rhythm. Oh, we suspect that's true. But that indoor life with artificial lighting prevents most women from having their cycles properly timed by moonlight. Oh, yeah, interesting. And they used to ground as well. According to oral and written accounts from the 1930s, women's menstrual cycles are manifestly dependent on the moon in some tropical regions. A medical text written in 1821 states that many women in warmer climates menstruated in accordance with lunar phases. The author says that only women who live a rather unchanged, simple way of life, and those belonging to so-called primitive tribes will menstruate largely under the influence of the moon. So God had that timed out as well. Beginning the cycle around the time of the new moon. Interesting. That would mean, way back then, that all the men of all those tribes knew by the moon when their wives were menstruating. Interesting. That's a new thought, too. Others suggest that women have simultaneous solar day and lunar day clocks. Yeah. Everything working together in harmony. One way or the other, messing with the natural order of things messes with women, which we will hear more about in a bit. So when we live, work, and sleep outdoors, we harmonize with nature, and nature harmonizes with us. Natural law. Animals in the wild do not have the diseases that we have. But indoor pets do have the same diseases as we do. They also eat processed, cooked foods like we do. They also are not grounded like we're not grounded. They are also exposed to the bright lights indoors as we are. You want your pet to be healthy? Put them outside most of the day. Don't let them be exposed to bright light at night. If you want to heal or help heal a sick animal, get them outside. Let them eat grass, expose that sunlight, ground it, etc., etc. Yeah, there's more than we can do. There's more we can do for animals than just fret or take them to a doctor who gives them drugs. We can put them outside in the healing environment. Interesting. I'm making a lot of connections this morning on this stuff I hadn't thought of until I'm actually doing this. I did ask God to fill in the blanks, inspire thoughts that didn't come from me, and I seem to be experiencing that here today for your benefit, for all of our benefit. All right, now the basic eat and healing principle of all this, the sun, the moon, and planet Earth all work in harmony to keep us healthy. And our babies healthy. And our pets healthy. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day it uttereth speech, and night unto night it showeth knowledge. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that croucheth beneath. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon. All right, now working at night may have scary health consequences for women. Not just men, not just women. Women who work at night or in rotating shifts. Whoa, rotating shifts? That sounds like a new mother. She has to work in rotating shifts. Her sleep cycles are all messed up. Women who work at night or in rotating shifts experience more irregular or painful menstrual periods, fewer pregnancies, more problems during pregnancy, and higher rates of stillbirths than do women working the day shift. Wow, we were designed to sleep at night. Shift work can kill you 15 years sooner, warns Whoop's chief scientist, while dramatically raising your risk for depression and suicide. Whoa! People who work constantly changing shifts often hold some of the most challenging and yet vital roles in society. Doctors, nurses, firefighters, respiratory therapists. I was that. I had to work rotating shifts and night shifts, and it was horrible. Shop workers and the police, to name a few. Oh, police. Wait a minute. When I was on the night shift and rotating shifts, I told my wife before I even started back into that respiratory therapy career that if I get on the night shift, I'm going to be grumpy all the time, because I'd learned that from experience, because I never get quality sleep. I was grumpy, snappy, edgy when I was awake. I was never fully awake. So apply this to the police. Police have guns. They have authority to use force, and lethal force. You do not want grumpy police. The police, this is just theory. What if the police on the night shift, those that have to work rotating shifts, what if they're more grumpy than the rest of the police, the day shifters, like detectives or something? My point is, police officers have to work night shifts as well, and they can be very grumpy, which makes them a bit more dangerous, wouldn't you think? They've got weapons on them. And yet millions of these night shift workers are at risk of dying significantly earlier than the rest of the labor force, and tend to be acutely susceptible to mental health issues as well. Hey, that mental health starts at grumpiness and irritability and impatience. Police officers, they do an invaluable work. I'm not talking against police officers. They have my greatest respect. And working the night shift, it makes it so much harder for them. All right, basic eat and healing principle here. Work when it's light, sleep when it's dark. To do otherwise messes with our health and lifespan. Don't mess with the light. Now, we are changing topics. Don't mess with the light. We have just seen the harmful effects of artificially turning night into day by the use of bright artificial lighting. Now let's look at what can happen when we turn day into night by the use of tinted glasses and other things. Some of this is from my previous presentation, the sun cure, or cancer versus the healing sun. You'll recognize some of them. Now, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of the world-famous Battle Creek Sanitarium told the story of an African tribe who lived unclothed in the sunlight all day, every day, their entire lives, just like Adam and Eve, until they sinned. The Sanitarium News Bulletin, November 1, 1929, is that story. Some of the unclothed tribes of Central Africa, who live on a diet similar to that of the gorilla, and with their naked bodies bathed in the glowing rays of tropical sun, are free from parasitic diseases and are possessed of a resistance to disease so high that cancer, one of the scourges of all civilized lands, is unknown. We make an application right here. Came to my head. There is, at this moment, I've been reading in the papers, there is a stomach flu going around. It's either a virus or a bacteria. If we want the best chances of not getting that, we boost our immune system, we get outside, we follow the rhythms of the sun and the dark. We get as much sunlight as we can because healing is in its beams, like these guys here. They were in the sun all day. Okay, now, one of the scourges of all civilized lands is unknown. Let's continue with this. And such a thing as appendicitis was never even heard of. Their dark skins have a luster and silken feel that no cosmetic could improve. And the tide of life runs so high in these lithe bodies that there is no end to their endurances. The men run with government dispatches 60 miles a day, day after day, for hundreds of miles. Just so you know, I have my sun cure presentation and the open air cure presentation talk about groups of people or individuals who have lived outdoors, work, sleep, and live outdoors in the sunlight, and some of them with little to no clothes on, that their endurances are magnificent, unheard of endurances. This is our goal for ultimate health. We get ourselves outside, again, grounded, following the rhythms of the earth and the light and the dark. And we do it on a regular basis, exercise and work, we will develop that kind of endurance. That is magnificent. Now, I told you this story here to tell you this next one. What do you think would happen were we to take another African tribe whose members were also lived all their lives unclothed in the sunlight all day, every day, but distort the sunlight on just 2 square inches of the body? The sunlight that enters their eyes. All right, here's the story. Dr. John Ott had a dinner given prior to one of my lectures. I sat next to the daughter of the late Dr. Albert Schweitzer. Our conversation dwelt mostly on her experiences as assistant to her father at Lambarene. By the way, Dr. John Ott is a photobiologist, very famous. Everybody quotes him. On Lambarene on the west coast of Africa. I asked her about the rate of cancer of the people in that area. She replied that when her father had first started the hospital, they found no cancer at all. But that now, it was a problem. And by the way, he doesn't say it, but I saw a documentary on it. Those natives did not adopt a Western diet. They did not eat with the white men, or they stuck with their own diet. So that wasn't it. Now, where do I start here? They found no cancer at all. I'm trying to go back right to it. All right, here it is. I asked her about the rate of cancer of the people in that area, and she replied that when her father had first started the hospital, they found no cancer at all. But that now, it was a problem. I asked if the people living there had started installing glass windows and electric light in their otherwise simple surroundings. Remember, he was a photobiologist, a light biologist, surroundings, and she said they had not. Well, then I half jokingly asked her if any of the natives wore sunglasses. Oh man, she looked startled and then told me that the natives paddling their dugout canoes up and down the river in front of the hospital often wore no more than a loincloth and sunglasses. Oh, sunglasses. And indeed, some wore only the sunglasses. These were the ones that were getting cancer. She further explained that sunglasses represented a status symbol of civilization and education and had a higher bartering value than beads and other such trinkets. So, even though unclothed natives are in the tropical sunlight all day, every day, their entire lives, they experience no cancer. But when they started distorting just the sunlight that enters the little eyes by wearing sunglasses all day, every day, cancer was the result. When we humans started wearing sunglasses, that was when we really started messing with God's natural order of things. Let's hear some few more related stories by Dr. John Ott. Dr. John Ott's broken glasses improved multiple health conditions. Here's John Ott in his own words. He's the author of Health and Light. He retired to Florida, hoping that southern sunlight would improve his legs, which were severely crippled by arthritis. I'm sorry, this is not his own words. I paraphrased it, summarized it. Some of this will be his, but not this. Unfortunately, sun soaking failed to help until he broke his sunglasses. Sunbathing without them improved his condition in a few days, really. Even enabled him to throw away his cane. To his delight, he found that his vision also improved. By the way, that was 6 months. That part there, the vision, took 6 months, just in case I don't mention it here in the future. Not a few days, unlike the arthritis. Dr. Ott found that the sunglasses filtered out almost all UV rays from the light reaching his eyes. He recommended that his friends also discard their sunglasses, and they received similar improvements in their vision. Really? Let's read that again. He recommended that his friends also discard their sunglasses, and they received similar improvements in their vision. After 6 months of not wearing my glasses, except for what little driving of the car was absolutely essential, and for focusing my projector when showing pictures, I began to notice that wearing my glasses, even for these short periods, seemed to strain my eyes more and more. Accordingly, an appointment with my oculist for a regular checkup seemed advisable. The principal difference in my new prescription was that the rather strong prisms previously needed to correct a muscular weakness were no longer needed. That should inspire us. He continues, during the worst of my arthritis, this is a quote, my children also began calling me Baldy. They had good reason for doing so, as the hair on the top of my head was rapidly becoming rather scarce. However, this situation, balding, also corrected itself after I began staying outdoors without my glasses. What if your husbands can get their hair back? It was shown, by the way, in another book I read, this is not on the script, that if they have completely lost their hair and it's been a long time, that it's not able to be reversed. So start them young. For several years, I had been bothered more and more with common head colds and sore throat. This troublesome condition also disappeared as I continued to practice my theories of being outdoors in the natural sunlight. He continues, this is a quote, several friends who had arthritis tried the same experiment and had similar beneficial results. Other friends with a variety of ailments, including bursitis, ulcers, acne, think teenagers, ulcers, let's review on that. Ulcers were prevented or reversed by living outdoors in the sunlight. Ulcers. Yeah, I know someone I could tell that to. Acne and bleeding gums. Now that's something. Bleeding gums, they insisted they were helped. Another friend no longer was bothered by hay fever. They all stopped living behind glass and stepped outside. Simple. Skin cancer cleared by light. John Ott again, quote, one of my friends had been troubled with skin cancer and on several occasions had undergone minor surgery. He was again having considerable difficulty and his physician had recommended further surgery. However, on his own initiative, he decided to try the same UV ocular therapy that he was giving his wife for her eye condition. Immediately, his skin cancers began to disappear. I'm sorry, that must be read again. Immediately, his skin cancers began to disappear. And within a matter of 4 or 5 months, his skin appeared perfectly normal without surgery or other treatment. Now, here is that ocular therapy Dr. Ott was talking about. It's so simple. Spend as much time as possible outdoors, full exposure, as much as possible. Avoid wearing any eyewear and looking through glass. Avoid artificial light sources, including TV. Now it applies to computer screens and monitors and telephones, mobile phones. Very simple. God's healing agencies are not grievous. His health statutes are not grievous. Stepping outside is not grievous. It's pleasant and it's healing. Lung cancer and sunglasses. Lung cancer too? A personal friend of mine told me of an acquaintance of his, a man in his early 70s, who had just been diagnosed as having terminal lung cancer. He was going to die. This man lived in the Southwest and wore sunglasses most of the time. My friend sent him a copy of My Ivory Cellar and a set of the instruction sheets that had been given to the 15 patients in New York City for living outdoors as much as possible and avoiding artificial light sources. The elderly cancer patient agreed to follow the instructions. The tumor completely disappeared. And he lived for approximately 8 years. Remember, he was 73. 8 years before dying of a heart complication. Yes, tumors and cancer can be reversed by stepping into the sunlight and or not using glasses. Interesting. Sunglasses are messing with the natural order of things. Yes, I say that term purposely over and over and over, so you will not forget it. Messing with the natural order of things messes with our health care. Got cancer? Check your glasses. Now, if you feel that you need to wear sunglasses, then use neutral medium gray rather than colored glasses. Advice is coming from Dr. John Ott. This option tones down the intensity of the bright sunlight without filtering out the colors that make up bright white light. Pink, blue, and red sunglasses are not recommended. This is from Light, Medicine of the Future, page 153, and it is based on Dr. John Ott's recommendations. If we mess with the color spectrum of white light, we distort light in ways that will hurt our health. I have no particular company to endorse on this one. Ultraviolet transmitting eyeglasses. Regular eyeglasses block about 86% of UV rays entering the eyes, leaving only 14% of UV to enter the eyes. This company claims that these glasses transmit 55 to 60% of beneficial UV light to enter your eyes. Go to my website for simplified details and things you need to know about this company and these glasses, because their website is so complicated. What? It's madness. So I spelled it out simply on my website, thesuncure.com. Hit the tab Resources, and it'll get to those glasses. They offer prescription glasses and they offer reading glasses. I make no money from them. I get nothing from them. I do not sell anything on my websites. So I retain my credibility. It's still far better to go without any kind of eyewear when outside. But for reading glasses, well, you got to do it indoors, sure. Pink. Pink? What about pink, John? All right, let's talk about it. Fertility and tinted glasses. Fertility. This is Dr. Ott again. Ott believes and has a number of cases to indicate that the cause of the inability of women to become pregnant is often due to wearing of tinted glasses. Pink tinted glasses. There are 169 fertility. This is him talking again. There are 169 fertility clinics in the United States that charge as much as $10,000 for therapy, and that was a long time ago, and usually fail to help the patient conceive. Dr. Ott relates his experience with 6 women who were able to conceive after he advised them to throw away their tinted glasses. Estrogen, one of the female hormones essential for conception, has a sharp peak in absorption of ultraviolet light at 290 nanometers. This frequency of light is usually filtered out by sunglasses, and therefore the woman's estrogen is not activated properly, and she cannot conceive. The same principle may well hold true for the male hormone. Athlete performance, aggression, and pink glasses. This is from the Kansas City Royals Baseball Academy, Sid Thrift Director, to Dr. John Ott. Dear John Ott, 30 days have now passed since we changed one of our players' glasses from a pink tinted to a medium gray as per your recommendation. It was amazing to observe how the player was changed from a hyper-aggressive and helmet-throwing player to a very relaxed person. There was a great deal of improvement in performance as well. The performance of one of our other players, who had mysteriously retrogressed for no evident reason, has, since the removal of psychedelic-type red lighting from his dormitory room, regained his usual good performance. Our entire staff would again like to thank you for the time you have spent enlightening us in areas that for too long have been explained only in vague generalities. Kansas City Royals. Yep, there's something to this. Pink glasses and psych issues. A questionnaire was given to about 300 college students by a psychology professor concerning eyewear, contacts, color of that eyewear, time spent outdoors, and time spent in front of the TV. Dr. John Ott tells about it here. Here's the quote. One rather clear relationship did show up. Although not statistically significant because only 3 cases were involved, 3 students did reply that they constantly wore hot pink glasses. And a check with the faculty ratings indicated that these same 3 students also were considered to be the most psychologically disturbed students in the college. Yeah, you got pink glasses, throw them out. Who knows what you can become with it? Does it affect this hot pink glasses? Would that affect our ability to think properly? Well, it messes with the mind. It does at that. Huh. I know someone with pink glasses. Okay. Prostate cancer versus pink eyeglasses. Dr. John Ott speaking. An elderly acquaintance had been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and surgery had been recommended. I found that he had, for many years, been wearing eyeglasses with a light pink tint, and I was able to persuade him to stop wearing these and get some new full-spectrum clear UV transmitting spectacles. I advised him to cut down as much as possible on watching TV and to spend more time outdoors or at least on an open screen porch. Hold on here. Yeah, that's interesting. I got to make this point while it's still in my head. Watching TV. So it's not just pink glasses. Those screens that we've been talking about through this presentation, they mess with the natural order of things as well. Blue light, these things can be causing cancer, like we discussed, but it somehow just hit me gangbusters right now. Watching TV isn't just bad for us psychologically and spiritually. It is bad for us, dangerous for our health. If you got cancer, take off your glasses, take off your sunglasses, take off your contact lenses, stop watching TV, get off your computer. Your life is at stake. Spend your time outdoors. Interesting. Now, let's continue on with this guy. He has now gone for 3 years without surgery, and the problem has apparently disappeared because he stopped wearing these things. The pink room reaction on prisoners, inmates. Baker Miller pink is used in jails, juvenile reformatories, and hundreds of correctional centers around the world. It absorbs all light rays except pink. That's why we paint our interior walls white, because it will reflect white light back at us, complete, whole white light. It absorbs all light rays except pink, referred to as monochromatic malilluminated environment. It has a calming effect, but saps energy. It decreases aggression, violent behavior, self-mutilating behavior, appetite, and stress. The new confinees only required a maximum of 15 minutes of exposure to ensure that the potential for violent or aggressive behavior had been reduced. Further, it was surprisingly discovered that the effects of the color linger on for at least another 30 minutes after removal from the cell. Most effective in jail cells less than 8 by 10. The effect of Baker-Miller pink has also been noted in colorblind and some blind subjects, suggesting a physiological mechanism. All right, continue. However, reactions are short-term. If left in cell too long, prisoners may regress to an even more agitated state. Application to us, now what do you think that would be? Think of families. Think of your little daughter. Don't paint your daughter's bedroom pink. You will have a bad seed as a result. Man, one grumpy, unhealthy little girl. Pink seems to be used very judiciously in nature, in small doses. Have you noticed that? And if it does show up, like on certain trees in spring, it lasts only a little bit. And it has lots of green leaves too. And this room that you're looking at is not natural. If we spend most of our time indoors, which is common for most of us, we will need all the help we can get to make those indoor spaces light healthy. White walls are a good beginning, or at least a multicolored experience. A pink room has the same kind of effect as wearing pink glasses or using pink lights. All right, moving on. White. The visible spectrum is a small percentage of sunlight, but it is a very important part of that spectrum. It is made up of many colors, and each color wavelength has its own function and healing properties. When sunlight passes through a prism, the visible white light, let's just say sunlight, becomes separated into its individual colors that make up white light. If sunlight is reflected off of, say, a green wall, that green paint absorbs all the other colors of visible light but green, so that only green light waves are reflected. Thus, we see green. Therefore, that reflected light that reaches our eyes is stripped of all the healing properties contained in all those other absorbed colors of light. It's processed junk light. So, our window glass in our homes first strips out some of the visible light, then most of the ultraviolet light, then our colored walls reflect back to our eyes light that has most of the remaining visible spectrum stripped out. That's the environment where we spend most of our time. So, is there any supporting evidence that this is actually bad for living organisms? Because that was theory, right? Well, where's the proof? Proof? Yes, there is proof. Long ago, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg conducted a couple of health experiments where he grew plants which received only that sunlight which was reflected off of different colored walls. He also grew plants that received only that sunlight that was filtered through different colored cloth or clothing. Here's a similar modern result. I don't have any pictures of it from history. The results of both were similar to this experiment right here. White walls reflected the full spectrum of visible light where we live and work. Thus, the plants receiving the sunlight reflected off of white walls were the healthiest. Colored walls may be needlessly adding to today's light-deprived homes and offices. These plants need all the help they can get to be light healthy, as do we. Black walls made the sickliest plants. Let me stop right there. 2 blocks from here, about 3 blocks from here, is a dentist office. That office has 2 plate glass windows, 2 paned windows. So that takes out all the UV, most of the light, and both those panes were tinted dark. So you'd go inside, and of course you'd say, well, this place is dark. It's unhealthy because there's all that light has been filtered and processed, and there's hardly anything left. But that wasn't enough. They painted their walls black. That has to be the most unhealthy dentist office I have ever been to, ever, or building that I have ever been to. Oh, man. But you just can't walk up to someone and say that. You got to give them a chain of evidence. Anyway. So, where was I here? These plants need all the help they can get to be light healthy, as do we. Black walls made the sickliest plants. This is why we do not mess with the color spectrum of white light with colored glasses or dark clothing. It's not just your eyes that need this. Our skin has receptors as well to light. We were originally designed to be naked. We were only wearing light at the time. This is why Dr. Kellogg recommended white walls and white clothing for invalids, children, and adults, especially children. This is what he says, and this is an abbreviated version. He says, ordinary cloth is more or less pervious to ultraviolet rays. In other words, it'll go through it. This fact explains the presence of freckles on covered parts. The writer's experiments demonstrated, however, that the amount of light which reaches the skin through the ordinary clothing is quite inadequate. Our experiments show clearly that the color of clothing is a matter of importance, and that the amount of light which comes in contact with the skin may be modified by the color of the fabrics worn, as well as by their texture. When white clothing is worn in the sunlight, the body is bathed in light, notwithstanding the fact that it is covered. When dark clothing is worn, all light is excluded from all portions of the skin. In other words, when we wear dark clothing, we live in the dark both day and night. Whereas when white is worn during the hours of daylight, we walk in the light. All right, think of your babies. Growing children, invalids, and persons compelled to live indoors would be especially benefited by the wearing of white clothing. And I know Dr. Kellogg states that it's best to have these kids near naked, if nothing else, when they're growing up. I mean, when they're babies, when they're toddlers, to get the greatest benefit. We need to find a way to implement that privately. Now let's just close with just 10 or so tiny little historical examples of what undistorted sunlight can do for our health. Undistorted bones. All right. Herodotus, 431 BC, Greek historian, born in the Persian Empire in the 5th century BC, a contemporary of Socrates. This is what he has to say from Heliotherapy, 1927, page 1 and 2. He said, amongst the skeletons that were lying in separate heaps, I found the skulls of the Persians so tender that even with a small stone I could break holes in them. Whereas the skulls of the Egyptians were so hard that it was almost impossible to smash them with a large stone. As the cause of this, they state, which I readily believe myself, that the Egyptians are in habit of cutting their hair short from their youth, and that consequently their skulls became hardened in the sun. On the other hand, the Persians have tender skulls because they keep the sun off their heads from childhood, inasmuch as they wear their tiara hats. Yep. Makes a difference in our health, what we cover ourselves with. Teeth. A couple of these. More sunlight equals fewer cavities. Study of 94,337 white boys 12 to 14 years of age showed the incidence of the incidence of cavities was directly related to the amount of sunlight available in the area in which the boys lived. The more sunlight, the fewer cavities. Cavities are seasonal, low sunlight. In a study involving over 800 children, it was discovered that the incidence of dental cavities was much higher during the winter and spring months than during the summer months when people are outside in the sun. So here's a reasonable question. If children in the winter, in the evening, lived in a very low incandescent light or candlelight with no TV or computers or phones, would they have fewer cavities even in the winter? Because we just learned that melatonin grabs on to the vitamin D receptors in the darkness of the long winters, replacing vitamin D and exactly what vitamin D does. Wouldn't that be interesting to run an experiment on that? All right, benefits of full body sunbathing. I'm going to make a disclaimer here. Just to be clear, I do not advocate public nudity. Public nudity. Never have, never will. That being said, this category that you're about to see contains 3 micro-stories of the benefits of full body exposure to sunlight. Now, I'm just warning you here that these 3 stories can be somewhat awkward and uncomfortable. That's why I've never put them in any of my health presentations. But I realize that mainstream medicine will not tell you this stuff. So somebody needs to step up to the plate and tell this particular healing quality of sunlight. Today, that's reluctantly me, and I'm the one that's going to be most embarrassed by it. I don't want to talk about it. I'd rather not, but it's going to benefit you. So don't complain about it. It's not bad pictures. It's just the content is just kind of embarrassing. Okay. I kept putting these images in and then taking them out, put them in, taking them out. I did that several times. Today, they are in. Just a few minutes ago, I put them in. Go figure. It's too important to leave out. So here we go. There's 3 of these. Body parts react differently to sunlight. Men's testicles produce 80% more testosterone than chest or back when exposed to sunlight. All right, you absorbing what that means? When the male chest or back is exposed to sunlight, the male hormones may increase by 120%. When the genital area is exposed, the hormones increase by 200%. Sunlight striking any part of the male body stimulates testosterone production. But when equal areas of back and genital skin, such as 4 square inches of each, are exposed to sunlight, there is almost no rise of male hormone from the back, as compared to a good rise of hormone with the same exposure of the genital area. And then, of course, sunlight to the eyes triggers completely different health effects. All right, number 2. This one's the hardest. I don't like this one. Childbirth is easier on nudists. I have had the privilege, this is a doctor talking, I have had the privilege of acting as obstetrician for professional nudists. And from the physical standpoint, I could not argue with those sun-tanned all over mothers. Their skin is more flexible, less brittle. The skin around the vagina in non-nudists' mothers is usually brittle and chapped. Animals have an advantage here. Not only is their vaginal area uncovered, they are constantly exposed to the toughening and evaporating effect of sunlight. So they have vaginal skin that is flexible instead of brittle. Told you this is awkward. All right, last one of those. 90% of the cases of high blood pressure in westernized populations have no apparent cause. At the same time, it is a known fact that many primitive people who live out of doors have almost no hypertension. it is apparent that an environmental factor must be investigated, and sunlight may be that factor. The naked truth about high blood pressure recently became more apparent when the Maryland Heart Association uncovered a group that suffers from hypertension only half as much as the national average, the nudists. Thankfully, we are done with that category. Eyesight. Eyesight improved in 3 days. I have found that my eyesight got better. This is from a friend of mine. I have found that my eyesight got better in reading small print after sunbathing with my face towards the sun for 15 minutes for 3 consecutive days. I sunbathed from 10 to 11, and 15 minutes of that was spent with my face towards the sun. That was from Benji Hornalis. He said I could use this. He is the general manager and director of Shalem Health Retreat in Western Australia. Cholesterol levels. Sunlight lowers cholesterol. Patients with hypertension and related circulatory problems were exposed to UV light. 2 hours after the first exposure, 97% of the patients had almost a 13% decrease in serum cholesterol levels. Within this group, 86 maintained this level for 24 hours later. Heart issues. Exercise converts abnormal EKGs to normal ones. And a study of the results of combined sunlight and exercise showed that a group that was getting the sunlight treatments with exercise had improved almost twice as much as shown by their EKGs as had those who only exercised and had no sunlight. This is very telling stuff. The sun is an incomparable weapon which nature has placed in the hands of every one of us, with which we can all defend ourselves successfully against the manifold ailments threatening us at all ages. That was from Dr. Augusta Rollier of the Sun Cure Clinics of Switzerland. And I would add, darkness is an incomparable weapon which nature has placed in the hands of every one of us, with which we can all defend ourselves successfully against the manifold ailments threatening us at all times. Understand? Patients at the Sun Cure Clinics got all the sunlight they could get, and it changed their lives. In conclusion here, and of Joseph he said, "Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew and for the deep that coucheth beneath, and for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon." We haven't even begun to plumb the depths of God's magnificent outdoor automatic healthcare system. But if we're open to hearing about it, if the pupil is ready, the teacher is always provided. The more study is done on this topic, the more we understand that everything in nature is interconnected. Our healthcare is found outdoors in nature, night and day. And that is all of this particular presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. I have plenty more at pillarsofeden.org and on my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, folks. And that's it.